That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, very rarely do I just go all in on a single player, because we know that when you play Dynasty, when you play fantasy football, everything you have to look at is just through the range of outcomes. Everything that you look at is just going, okay, what is the floor here? What is the ceiling? And what's the chance that this player hits either one? And because of that, it's hard to look at a single player and go, okay, we are more than willing to have this player in over 50% of our dynasty leagues. We're more than willing to go out and significantly invest into them. Well, that's what we have here with Trey Lance. I mean, I am looking at Trey Lance, and I just think that he checks every single box to be an elite player that you can build your dynasty team around, regardless of if you're looking at a ceiling or even if you're looking at his floor. And I know that we have talked a ton about Trey Lance regarding the other rookies in this draft class. We've talked a lot about Trey Lance versus Justin Fields, Trey Lance versus Trevor Lawrence. So I'm not going to be talking about that right now. First, let me go into why I think that Trey Lance is such a good prospect at the quarterback position coming into the NFL. Then let me talk about where I actually have Trey Lance valued in Dynasty Superflex drafts. And then at the very end, I will go through and I'll talk about 10 trade offers that I've sent out in my real Patreon Dynasty Flock Leagues trying to acquire Trey Lance from the team who drafted him. And real quick, I'm sorry if y'all see my dog over there going crazy. She has a cone on right now. She had an emergency surgery a couple days ago, so she has to be around me. She can't be on her own right now, but nonetheless, hopefully that's not too distracting. And yeah, of course, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And I will say we have one exciting announcement, and that is tonight. I cannot tell y'all what time yet. I'm going to be putting out the official announcement on the details of the Auction Dynasty Patreon draft that we are going to be doing on Friday. Now, we don't have the official details, so please don't message me on Patreon telling me that you're 100% in, wanting to get your league dues in the league, because you don't even know what time it is. So how are you going to know that if you're going to be available for that 2.5, 3 hour stretch? So once I know those details, I will be uploading them on Patreon tonight. And please shoot me a DM as soon as you can if you're wanting to get in that league. Okay, so let's get into it. Trey Lance here. Let's talk about what he is coming into the NFL. And he is a quarterback with elite mobility, elite rushing upside. And if we are looking at his rushing upside, it's something that you rarely ever see. So, of course, you're going to have quarterbacks that were elite rushing quarterbacks coming into the NFL out of college. But a lot of those times, those quarterbacks simply don't have the arm strength. They don't have the accuracy to be worth a top pick in the NFL draft. And I know a lot of people want to come out, and a lot of people want to just be armchair quarterback scouts. A lot of people think that they can watch these quarterbacks on the all-22 tape, that they can actually evaluate how these players are going to transition into the NFL, where we have said time and time again that we're not that arrogant. I am not willing to say that we are smart enough to look at those guys and can go, okay, for sure, we see that he is moving to the left here. He throws across his body, and it's an accurate throw that's going to translate. No, it's very hard to do that. So instead, we are going to leave that to the NFL franchises, because we've seen with the NFL franchises before, yes, they always miss on a quarterback or two, because it's the hardest position in the entire NFL, possibly the hardest position in all of sports to evaluate from college to the NFL level. So yes, I understand that there are going to be a few people pointing out outliers in the comment section because they don't understand how sample sizes work. They think that they can identify outliers, and by going, Mason, how are you going to talk about draft capital? Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th. Patrick Mahomes was drafted outside the top 5, as well as Deshaun Watson. Are you going to tell me that NFL teams, they're all the smartest people in the world? No, that's not what I'm telling you. But what I'm telling you is, if you were actually playing Dynasty back when Patrick Mahomes came into the league, back when Deshaun Watson came into the league, back when Tom Brady came into the league, and obviously I wasn't playing Dynasty back then. I probably didn't know what a football was back then. But nonetheless, if you're looking at that draft capital, it is so important not only in determining what those teams think of the quarterback, but more importantly, how long of a leash that quarterback's going to get with guaranteed starts at the NFL level. And we know in fantasy football, I mean, you need the guaranteed starts. If you're not getting those guaranteed starts, your floor is not really going to be something that we can invest into. But nonetheless, if we are looking at the actual stats from Trey Lance, what I want to focus in on with his ceiling is the fact that he averaged 69 rushing yards a game in his full season starting. Yes, he also had 42 total touchdowns without throwing a single interception, but I don't want to focus too much on that. That goes with the draft capital. That goes with the overall talent that Trey Lance is that the NFL tells us. I want to focus in on once he gets those starting opportunities, what should we be expecting on the ground? What type of output should we be looking to see? So what I did for this is we wanted to go through and we wanted to look since the year 2000. How many quarterbacks in the top 10 had close to 69 rushing yards a game in any season in college? And surprisingly, there are not that many guys to look at. I mean, the most recent examples you have are a Kyler Murray, we loved coming into the NFL because he checked the guaranteed starter box, as well as having that extremely long leash, as well as having the elite rushing upside that we knew when he was starting, he was going to be a quarterback that was scoring fantasy points regardless, because we know how important rushing is at the quarterback position. Then you also have RG3 with 70 rushing yards a game. RG3, yes, career got cut short with some injuries, but his rookie season, he already came in and he was an elite producer for fantasy leagues. So I want to focus in on the upside here. Of course, these are not going to be players that compare one-to-one for Trey Lance, but these are going to be players that we need to be looking at what their rushing upside in college did to translate to NFL, and if they were able to continue to rack up points on the ground. Then you have Cam Newton, who averaged 100 rushing yards a game. Obviously, Cam Newton in his peak powers was the best asset that you could have in Superflex Dynasty Fantasy Football. Then you have Vince Young. So yes, Vince Young, not as exciting, but also Michael Vick. So since the year 2000, there were 5 quarterbacks coming into the NFL that possessed as much rushing upside as Trey Lance did in that top 10 top 10 overall pick selection. And 4 of these guys were complete smashes at the NFL level. 4 of them in fantasy football, were the picture perfect guys that you wanted for that elite upside. And what I also want to talk about is I want to talk about what kind of floor do these guys have. So obviously we can kind of look at what we have seen previously by these rushing quarterbacks and how they translate over to fantasy, because if you go into the NFL and just say you run for 500 yards in a season, say Trey Lance does that his sophomore year in San Francisco, that translates over to 50 fantasy points. Then you try to see how much you have a stationary quarterback trying to make that up on through the air. 50 fantasy points on the ground, just rushing, not even including the fact that they get extra points for rushing touchdowns compared to passing touchdowns. Just the rushing yards alone, that 50 points will be equivalent to about 12.5 passing touchdowns. Now, that is absolutely massive. That's like a passing touchdown a game that they are just getting on the ground, though in the fact that they're probably going to have rushing touchdowns to go along with it, like you saw with Kyler Murray this past year, and that's how you access the elite ceiling. But let's try to identify what the floor is. And we already talked about this in the video where we discussed Justin Fields. So I want to kind of keep this brief, but an easy thing that you can look at is you can go, okay, exactly how long is the leash for these quarterbacks that get that elite draft capital? These quarterbacks that come in and are showing the ability to just maintain their starting job for a very long time, despite however their play is. Now, if we're looking at the last 10 quarterbacks drafted in the top 3 overall picks, you have Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, clearly all guys that project to start a significant amount of time, guys that you don't have to worry about their job security. Then beyond that, you have a ton of bust on this list. You have bust after bust after bust after bust. And that's what we were saying at the beginning of the video. I am not saying that NFL teams are the smartest people on the planet. I'm not saying that these teams are 100% going to accurately determine the actual talent level in these quarterbacks coming into the NFL. Now, I do think that they're very good at it compared to the average person, but it's a very hard thing to do. So you are going to see a high bust rate. But even with these quarterbacks that are busting, they are players that still have a very high floor for fantasy. Now, if we go through, you have Sam Darnold, who has been very disappointing through 3 seasons starting already, but now he's going into his 4th. So even though you can look at Sam Darnold, you can go, okay, he's probably been considered a bust by most. He's still a starting quarterback going into year 4. Mitchell Trubisky got 4 years to start. Jared Goff got 5 years to start, and he's going into his 6th. Carson Wentz got 5 years to start and is going into his 6th as well. Jameis Winston got 5 years to start. Marcus Mariota got 4 years, and Blake Bortles got 5 as well. So now you're looking at these quarterbacks like Zach Wilson and, more importantly, like Trey Lance as guys that have a very high floor given the fact that they are going to have a starting job in fantasy over the next 4 seasons. And 4 seasons is a ton of time, guys. I mean, 4 years, just think about what you were doing 4 years ago. I mean, if you have kids, think about what your kids were doing because maybe their life is changing a little bit faster than yours. But nonetheless, I mean, 4 years is a ton of time, and you get that guaranteed starter in Trey Lance. And we've already discussed the fact that his rushing upside is going to bring in that elite ceiling, and that rushing production should also give him a baseline floor that we should expect, given the fact that if he is rushing for 40 rushing yards a game, obviously you can't expect that every single game, but something in that range, that's going to give him a floor where he's most likely a quarterback 2 at the very worst. Now, this is all without saying that he is going into an elite situation where he has the best tight end in the entire NFL in George Kittle. He has a very good offensive line in San Francisco. Throw in the fact that he has a very good coach as well in Kyle Shanahan. He has Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, both of those players still on their rookie contracts. So we look at Trey Lance, you go, okay, he has the rushing upside to be an elite quarterback in fantasy. He has the draft capital, and not to mention, he was a top 3 overall draft pick, but he was also, if you take a step back, a player that the 49ers invested 3 first-round picks into. They sent the 12th as well as 2 future first for Trey Lance, so the investment clearly shows that he has at the very minimum 4 years to be the starting quarterback in San Francisco if you look at historically what happens with these QBs. So we go, okay, he has a very high floor for fantasy. He has a very high ceiling. Now he's going into a situation where he should be able to thrive. I mean, if you can't thrive in San Francisco, really, where are you going to be able to have success? So now we are looking at the situation going, you know what? It's probably a little more likely that he's closer to his ceiling than he is with his floor. And his floor is already very high. I mean, just think about if you drafted Sam Darnold in the middle of the first round of his rookie draft so many years ago. Yes, that was a very disappointing draft pick. Yes, it was considered a bust by most, but you've probably started Sam Darnold in your quarterback 2 spot a decent amount of times. And not to mention that, yes, you lost value by investing that mid-first round pick, but if you went to trade Sam Darnold right now, you could get an early second. So how bad was that investment? I mean, worst case scenario pretty much happened, and it still wasn't that bad. And I think we are seeing the same thing with Trey Lance, and this is why I'm going through, and I think I am sending some decent offers for Lance. Of course, these are all initial offers. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these get declined, maybe some get countered. But like I said, guys, we only need 1 or 2 to get accepted to increase our exposure. Hopefully, we get more counters than we get declines. That way, we can try to bump up our asking price a little bit for Trey Lance, and we can get some of these deals done. But nonetheless, our first trade that we did offer was Daniel Jones, DeAndre Swift, a 4th and a 5th round rookie pick for both Trey Lance and Zach Wilson. So essentially, trading DeAndre Swift for Trey Lance, and then trying to get a little bit on top of it by moving Daniel Jones and a few late rookie picks for Zach Wilson. Now, our next deal was Miles Sanders, Diami Brown, a 4th round rookie pick, a 5th round rookie pick for Trey Lance. And keep in mind, guys, these are all best ball leagues as well, the leagues that we are going through currently. So you're always going to be a little bit more hesitant to give up those extra pieces, because if you're giving up a wide receiver that's going to just say randomly pop off for 3 20-point weeks throughout the course of the season, that's going to make a difference in your starting lineup. Then our next deal that we offered was Ryan Tannehill, Laviska Shenault, a 4th and a 5th round rookie pick for Trey Lance. Keep in mind, these are all different Flock Patreon Dynasty leagues. We also offered J.K. Dobbins for Trey Lance and Kellen Mond. We also offered Clyde Edwards-Helaire for Trey Lance and Corey Davis. We offered Justin Fields, a 4th and a 5th round rookie pick for Trey Lance as well. And lastly, we offered Mac Jones, Jalen Hurts, a 4th and a 5th round rookie pick for both Trey Lance and Courtland Sutton. So I will keep y'all updated on if any of these deals get accepted. I am not expecting that many to be accepted. I'm hoping that maybe 1 is, and then I'm hoping that we get some counters in the other leagues. And of course, we would be willing to bump up our price a little bit on Trey Lance, because I need to get this player on our team. I think that he should be a early second-round startup pick. Maybe he pushes up into that tier where you have players like Trevor Lawrence. I think that he should, to be completely honest. But yeah, let me know what y'all are thinking. Let me know if y'all think that I am just straight up crazy with what we are doing with Trey Lance right now and how we are trying to aggressively pursue him, because I wanted to come away with him more in our rookie drafts. Just the problem was we didn't have that many early first, and where we did have the possibility to trade up, we did, so we could draft Lance. But I mean, it was very far and few between. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. Of course, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow. I want to give a big thank you for everyone supporting the show in Benjamin, Bill, Jason, Matthew, Hutton, Sean, Freddie's Berto, Andy, Frederick, and Chris.